cutting out your facing pattern pieces on your shell fabric. Now take the lining material and lay out the lining pattern pieces. Cut around all the pattern pieces. For my lining and my facing, you guys would be cutting out the interfacing strips and again doing the same, ironing it all around the edges to stop the fraying. So it's cutting out the interfacing and sticking it around the edges of all the pattern pieces like so. I have a trusty overlocker, so I'm going to be using that because it just saves a bit of time. Interface or overlock all of your pattern pieces again to stop the fray. Now I'm laying out all of the facing and lining pieces. These two are top, front 1 and 2 facing. This is front lining 3, front lining 4. And again, bottom facing 3 and bottom facing 4. Lay out all your front facing and lining pieces. Now I'm taking the front top facing pieces 1 and 2 and sewing them together, much like we did for the shell of the dress. Make sure good sides are facing each other. And we're doing that on both sides of the front facing. Like so. Now we're going to take lining pieces 3 and 4 and sew them together on both sides. Stitching down here. Again, make sure that both good sides of the fabric are facing each other when you sew it together. Now we're sewing bottom front facing 5 and 6 together at both sides. Pin and sew. Once ironed out and laid down, this is what we've got now. Next we're going to sew these bottom pieces to the lining. Sew straight across here and here. Now we've got these two separate pieces. We're going to join the two top facings together. Now we're going to be doing it the same way as we did with the shell, and we're just going to be sewing up a stitch about 3 centimetres just to hold the pieces together. This is what we should be looking at now when it's laid out flat. Now we're going to begin sewing these two pieces together now, folding them over good sides facing each other and sewing down the centre front. Now we're going to start on the back lining. So this is back top 5 and 6 facing, the lining back 7 and 8, and the facing bottom back 7 and 8. We're going to start off by sewing the top back facing together. So we're sewing right down there and again right down there. Once sewn, press open with the iron on both sides. Now we're going to sew pieces lining 7 and 8 together. Right down here, and the same at the other side as well. And again sew right down here. Now sew these two back facing pieces together down the centre back. Now I'm taking this side of the lining, folding over both good sides facing each other, and I'm going to sew right down here. Next step is to sew these two bottom facing pieces together on both sides. I'm going to stitch right down here and here. You can now sew these two back pieces together down the centre back seam. You should have something that looks like this. You're going to fold it over and sew right along here now. You're going to be sewing your front top to your bottom front. You're going to be folding it over and sewing it right along here. Make sure that the seams are lined up so that they run smoothly together. Do the same with the top back and the bottom back now. Now we've got the two linings we're going to place the back face down on the front. Now, because on our dress we've left one side for the zip, you have to work out on the lining what side that is. So on my dress it's this side. So it means that we're going to sew right up this side together, and then only 20 centimetres like we did before in the side with the zip. At this stage you should have an inside out dress. Now I'm going to take my shell and place it inside the lining so that both good sides of the fabric are facing each other. Now we're going to start pinning this shell and the lining together, and we're going to be pinning all the way along the top, along here and right the way round. So I've got my lining now and my facing, and they're going to be sewn together all the way along the top. So we're going to go round this curve, back up, round here, down the side and round the back. So I'm starting off at the top, going from one side of where the zip's going to be right along the top of the pattern piece. Once you've sewn, you should have something that looks like this. So we turn it inside out. And you should get something like this. So we need to press all around here with the iron now. We now need to focus on the bottom part. But this is the top of the dress, the shell and the lining. Now what I've done is I've turned the bottom inside out, then I can sew the bottom, the shell and the lining together. And I've done it so that both right sides are facing each other. You go through the side bit where the zip's supposed to go, and you're lining up every single seam on both sides. So basically, once you pinned it and you sew along there, we'll be able to turn it back through the side, and then the lining and the dress will be complete. Now when you're sewing up the hem, make sure you leave a small gap of about 7 or 8 centimetres. You need this gap because when you sew the zip in, you need to turn the dress inside out, sew the zip in and then turn it back round the right way again, and we're going to be going through the gap in the hem to do that. This is the little gap that I've left in the lining. So it means when we want to put the zip in, we can turn it all inside out through this gap, put the zip in and then turn it back the right way. Now I'm taking out all the pins. Now that I've got the pins out, I'm going to fold my dress back in the lining. Okay, so this is what my dress is looking like now. I've pinned it to the model, and I'm going to be putting the zip in there in a minute. But before we put the zip in, we need to decide where we want to put the ribbon detail across the front. Now on the top bodice, I'm going to be placing this ribbon along here for detail, and it's also going to make sure that the dress doesn't part and show too much booby. Now I'm leaving a 1.5 centimetre gap there. I'm going to be measuring at this side to make sure the same distance is here as it is here. And then I'm going to pin this ribbon right along. When you're sewing the ribbon on, you can't use a sewing machine at this point. You just have to use a small hand stitch, and it's called a slip stitch. It's just basically at each side of the ribbon a small stitch that's going to hold it in place along the bodice. And make sure that you don't sew the front and the back of the dress together. Now it's time to sew in the zip. And remember, when you pull the dress back through, you go through the gap in the hem that you've left. Now you're going to sew back up the hem, slip stitching securely shut. Next job is to add on the chiffon fabric, and it was about £10 a metre. I think I bought 3 metres just to be safe. I've hemmed it, which means that I've folded it once and then folded it again with the sewing machine and sewn along there to stop any frayed edges. I pleated along here and pinned to the dress. Then I slip stitched by hand all along here so that it was nice and secure on the dress. When it came to the side, I had to leave a little gap there, which I've made into a design feature. Now that gap is because when you're taking the dress on and off, you need to be able to undo the zip and open the dress enough to get it on. Another little detail that I made is hand sewed on some sequins here. So once the dress was all made up, I just took my needle and thread and sewed on these sequences into one of the panels, and it definitely gives a good effect. Nice and sparkly and show-stopping.